Listen closely, for what I am about to say is of eternal significance. You stand at the threshold of your life, facing doors that represent opportunities, challenges, and decisions. But let me tell you this, you do not control these doors. No matter how hard you strive, no matter how much you plan, you are not the master of the doors that stand before you. The world tells you to seize control, to take charge of your destiny. But the truth is, the doors that matter most are opened and closed by forces beyond your comprehension. You may knock, you may seek, but unless the door is opened from the other side, you will remain outside. Consider the doors of opportunity. You may have the qualifications, the experience, the ambition, but if the door is not open to you, all your efforts are in vain. And yet, how often do you find yourself frustrated, angry, even bitter when doors remain closed? You question, you doubt, you wonder why. But have you ever stopped to ask, who holds the key? Then there are the doors of suffering. Illness, loss, betrayal. These doors are not of your choosing. They come unbidden, often without warning, and yet you must walk through them. You may try to avoid them, to escape them, but they are there, and you must face them. And what of the doors of temptation? They stand before you, alluring, enticing. You may try to resist, to turn away, but they beckon you. And when you succumb, when you enter, you find yourself trapped, ensnared, longing to escape but unable to. But here's the truth you must grasp. You are not alone in this. There is one who stands at the door and knocks. There is one who holds the keys. And when you open the door to him, when you invite him in, he will guide you through every door you face. But this requires humility. It requires surrender. It requires acknowledging that you are not the master of your fate, that you are not the captain of your soul. You must relinquish control, submit to his will, and trust that he knows what is best. The doors you face are not obstacles to be overcome by your strength or wisdom. They are opportunities to trust, to obey, to follow. And when you do, when you walk in faith, you will find that the doors are open to you, not by your effort, but by his grace. So, I ask you, what doors are you facing today? Are you knocking, striving, pushing? Or are you waiting, listening, trusting? Remember, the one who holds the keys is faithful. He will open the doors that need to be opened and close those that need to be closed. Your task is not to force the doors, but to trust the one who controls them. Do not be dismayed when doors remain closed. Do not be discouraged when the path is blocked. Instead, trust that he knows what is best. Trust that he is working all things for your good. Trust that he will guide you through every door, every challenge, every trial. And when you do, you will find that the doors you face are not barriers, but blessings. Not obstacles, but opportunities. Not hindrances, but help. For he who controls the doors is faithful, and he will lead you through them all. This message is a call to recognize the sovereignty of the one who controls the doors of our lives. It is a reminder to trust in his timing, his wisdom, and his plan. May you find peace in knowing that the doors you face are under his control. No matter how strong, wise, or ambitious you are, the opportunities, trials, and outcomes in your life are not ultimately in your hands. True control lies beyond you. Whether it's opportunity, suffering, or temptation, each door serves a divine purpose. Some are meant to refine you, some to protect you, and others to prepare you. The proper response to closed doors is not frustration or self-reliance, but humble trust and surrender. The doors that matter open through obedience and faith, not striving. What may seem like denial or delay is often God's protection or redirection. Every closed or open door is part of a greater, wiser plan that leads to your ultimate good. You think you hold the key. You think if you push hard enough, speak loud enough, strive long enough, the doors before you will yield. But let me ask you, who told you that the doors of your life answer to your command? Where did you come up with this notion that if you just had enough vision or confidence or persistence, you would walk into whatever room you please? My friend, you've been lied to, and worse, perhaps you have believed it. But let me tell you now, with all the gravity and fear and trembling that such a truth deserves, you do not control the doors in your life. You may have mapped out your future, you may have pictured it, declared it, written it down, and yet, when the time came, the door you expected to open stayed shut. You knocked, and nothing happened. You prayed, and silence answered. You waited, and the waiting went on, until it became unbearable, and then the whisper entered your heart, maybe this isn't your door. But you ignored it, because deep down, you still believed that if you just pushed harder, forced it open, demanded it, then you'd get what you wanted. But the door stayed closed, and instead of falling to your knees, you fell into despair. Why? Because you believed a lie, because you thought you were in control. Do you see the arrogance in that belief? Do you see the pride buried beneath it? What makes you think that your will should determine the outcome of your life? Who gave you that authority? Who placed the future in your hands? You say you believe in divine authority, in a sovereign plan, in something greater than yourself. But do you live like it? Do you walk like it? Or do you only nod at sovereignty when things go your way? It is easy to talk about surrender when the doors are opening. It is easy to speak of faith when the path is clear and wide and beautiful. But when the door is shut, when every effort fails and the lights go out, then what? Then we learn whether we really believe what we say. Then we see whether we have trusted in a God who leads us, or simply used God to get where we wanted to go. And hear me, this is not a word of condemnation. It is a word of warning and of hope. Because the sooner you come to grips with the reality that you do not control the doors in your life, the sooner you will stop carrying burdens you were never meant to carry. The sooner you stop playing God, the sooner you can start following God, and that's where real peace begins, not in getting every door you ask for, but in trusting the one who opens and shuts them according to perfect wisdom. Let's go deeper. Some of you are standing in front of a door right now that will not open. You have begged, pleaded, fasted, and still the door is shut. And maybe in your mind, this door is the difference between life and death. Maybe it's the job, the healing, the reconciliation, the opportunity. You feel like everything depends on this door opening, and yet the more you wait, the more it feels like rejection. So what do? Let me say it plainly, you must bow. You must surrender not just your will, but your understanding. You must stop demanding that the door make sense to you. The door is not obligated to explain itself. It is not your job to understand everything. It is your job to trust the one who does. And sometimes trusting means waiting. Sometimes trusting means accepting a closed door, not as punishment, but as providence. Do you remember Joseph, a man of dreams, a man with a calling? And yet what happened? Doors closed. He was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, imprisoned unjustly. Every door he would have chosen was slammed shut. But through it all, he did not shake his fist at the heavens. He trusted, and what happened? In time, on God's time, another door opened, one that no man could have predicted, from prison to palace, from forgotten to favored. But what if Joseph had given up in the prison? What if he had decided that since the doors he wanted had closed, there was no point in trusting any more? You see, you only get to the palace by walking through the prison. You only get to the promise by trusting through the pain, The doors are not random. They are not arbitrary. They are governed by purpose. They are governed by a will that is infinitely higher than yours. And what about Paul, apostle, missionary, preacher, and yet, read his letters. Over and over, he speaks of doors that were closed, places he wanted to go but could not, people he wanted to see but was forbidden, desires he had to preach and plant and travel, but again and again he was held back. And still he trusted, still he served, because he understood something many of us have not yet grasped, that the closing of a door does not mean the end of the mission. It simply means a redirection of it. There are times in life when the door slams shut so violently that it leaves you wounded. It leaves you doubting everything you thought you knew, but even then, especially then, there is purpose. Sometimes the most gracious thing that can happen to you is for a door to close, because that closed door protects you from something you cannot see, because that closed door is God's mercy dressed in mystery, because that closed door is not the end, it is the path to something better, but the heart resists this, because we want control, we want clarity, we want certainty, and doors represent mystery. They hide what's on the other side. And when they remain shut, we panic, because we fear the unknown. We fear the silence. But hear me, fear is not the fruit of faith. Fear grows in the soil of control, but faith grows in surrender. Some of you right now are exhausting yourselves trying to kick down a door that will not open. And you are growing bitter, disillusioned, maybe even angry. You say things like, "Why would a good God keep this from me?" But let me ask you, who made you the judge of what is good, who told you that your definition of good is flawless? Maybe what you are asking for would destroy you. Maybe what you are fighting for is not your door. Maybe the silence is not rejection, but redirection. But you'll never know if you don't let go. There is freedom in surrender. There is rest in release. You are not created to carry the burden of outcomes. You are not designed to manage the future. That's not your role. Your role is obedience. Your role is trust. You are called to knock, but not to force. You are called to seek, but not to manipulate. And if the door remains shut, then you wait, you pray, you trust, because the one who holds the keys does not make mistakes. And let me tell you something else. Some of the most beautiful chapters of your life will come through doors you didn't even know existed. While you are staring at the one door you want, heaven may be orchestrating something far greater behind you. You think this is the only way, but you forget. Your vision is limited. Your knowledge is partial. Your wisdom is flawed. Why would you stake your life on your own understanding? So let go. Stop pounding on a door that will not open. Stop thinking that your worth is tied to the door you've fixated on. It's not. Your worth is not in the outcome, it's in the obedience. You are not called to control. You are called to walk faithfully, even when the road is unclear. Even when the door is closed, and don't fall into the trap of comparison. You look at others, and their doors seem wide open. Their lives seem full of opportunity, and you begin to wonder, why not me? But comparison is a poison. It blinds you to what is happening in your own life. It causes you to resent rather than rejoice. And worst of all, it convinces you that God's plan for others must be better than His plan for you. But listen, their door is not your door. Their calling is not your calling, and your journey is not theirs. Trust the timing, trust the silence, trust the shut doors, because behind every door is a divine decision, and none of it is wasted. And remember this, just because a door is open doesn't mean it's right, and just because a door is closed doesn't mean it's wrong. The enemy can open doors too. Temptation can look like opportunity. The wrong path can come dressed in blessing. That's why discernment matters. That's why you must walk closely, listen carefully, and never run ahead. So here you are, maybe frustrated, maybe confused, maybe desperate, and the door in front of you will not open. You have a choice. You can fight it, or you can trust the one who controls it. You can demand your way, or you can lay down your will. But let me tell you, the deeper joy, the lasting peace, the enduring hope, it comes not in getting the door you want, but in trusting the one who knows which doors are right. The doors you do not control are not a curse. They are a call to deeper faith, a call to surrender, a call to trust, because in the end, it's not about the doors, it's about the one who holds them, and he is good, always, even when the door stays shut. You walk through life thinking every closed door is a mistake, every deed or a delay, every no a failure. You wonder why some things begin and others never do. You cry out for understanding. You ache for clarity. But you must know this. The doors in your life are not opening and closing at random. They are not reacting to your strength or your weakness, your righteousness or your unworthiness. They open and close with purpose, with intent, and with perfect knowledge. The one who holds the keys is not confused. He is not guessing. He is not adjusting based on circumstance. He acts with sovereign intent, and every door, whether open or shut, carries meaning in the eternal plan he is weaving. You may not see the purpose now. You may not understand why a door you longed for has been shut so firmly it bruises your soul. But lack of understanding does not mean lack of purpose. We are finite beings walking in the fog of time, while the one who governs the doors sees from eternity. What you think is rejection may be protection. What you label as failure may be foundation. What seems like delay may be development. The problem isn't with the door, it's with our limited sight. Look through the pages of history, and you will see this truth repeated again and again. Think of Moses. He was raised in the palace, trained in power, and he sensed a calling. But when he stepped out too soon, the door closed. He fled into the wilderness, not for a week or a month, but for 40 years. Do you think he understood why? Do you think he saw purpose in the silence? And yet, in that desert, God was shaping a deliverer. That closed door was not punishment. It was preparation. And when the right time came, another door opened. Burning bush, a divine encounter, a new assignment. Or consider Ruth, a widow in a foreign land, no security, no promises. The doors of comfort, stability, and familiarity were slammed shut. She clung to her mother-in-law and stepped into the unknown. But was that not the hand of purpose? Was it not through those seemingly broken circumstances that she walked into the field of bows, into the lineage of a king, into the lineage of redemption itself? If the doors had remained open in Moab, she would have never stepped into her destiny. Too often we mourn the doors that close without considering that something higher is at work. We assume that what we want must be what is right. But desires alone are not confirmation of calling. Even good desires can be wrong if they are not appointed for the right time. Some doors are closed not because they are wrong forever, but because they are wrong right now. And you must trust the timing of the one who sees the end from the beginning. The open doors, too, carry purpose, but do not assume every open door is from God. Open doors must be discerned, not just desired. The enemy knows how to imitate opportunity. Not every promotion is provision. Not every relationship is covenant. Not every path that looks easy is meant to be taken. If the enemy can distract you with something that looks good, he will keep you from what is best. That is why you must test every door. You must measure it not against your feelings or your preferences, but against truth, against wisdom, against the quiet leading that comes when your heart is surrendered. Think of Jonah. The door to flee was open. The ship was waiting. The crew was ready. Everything aligned to let him run from what he was called to do. But was it God's door? No. It was disobedience disguised as convenience. And what followed was a storm, a belly of a great fish, and the long road back to obedience. Just because the door swings open does not mean it leads to life. You must discern. You must be willing to let go of the door that looks right if the spirit within you says no. But the open doors that are from God, oh, how they shine with divine intention. They do not always come with ease or clarity, but when you walk through them, there is fruit, there is growth, there is grace. These doors lead to things you could never have imagined, because they are not born of your plan. They are born of His. You may hesitate, you may doubt, but when you step in faith, you find the ground is solid beneath your feet. Think of the early church. Persecution scattered them. It seemed like chaos, like destruction, but was it? Or was it divine strategy? Every door of comfort was closed so that the message would go out. Jerusalem was shaken so that the gospel would be carried to the nations. What looked like disaster was actually divine deployment. You see, the doors open and close not for your comfort, but for His kingdom. Your calling is not about building a life of ease. It's about being faithful where you are placed, whether that place is a palace or a prison. And remember, sometimes a door must be shut so that you will knock on another. Sometimes a dream must die so that a greater one can be born. We cling so tightly to our expectations that we miss the invitation being offered through the closing. You think it's over, but God says it's just begun. You think you're being denied, but God is saying, look again. He's pointing to something else, something better, something deeper. But you must be willing to let go of what was never meant to remain. There are times in life when the open door costs you something, when stepping forward feels like stepping into fire. Don't assume the difficulty means it's the wrong door. The path of obedience is often lined with trials. But the purpose is not the absence of pain, it's the presence of transformation. You are being refined, tested, made holy. The open door may lead into the wilderness, but it also leads to the mountain. You don't walk through it alone. The one who opened it walks beside you. And what about those doors that seem to open, only to shut again? You taste hope, and then it vanishes. You begin to walk, and the ground collapses. What is the purpose in that? It may be to teach you detachment, to remind you that your security is not in doors, but in the one who holds them. It may be to train your heart not to worship the outcome, but to remain faithful in the process. The opening was not a mistake. It was a test, a lesson, a moment to show whether you are following God or chasing outcomes. Do not be deceived by appearances. Doors are not always obvious. Some look small and insignificant, but behind them lies extraordinary purpose. Others appear grand and glorious, but they are hollow inside. You must not trust the frame of the door. Trust the one who directs your steps. He sees what lies beyond. He knows what will shape you. He understands what is needed for your soul. And don't forget, sometimes you are the door. Sometimes the purpose is not just what happens to you, but what happens through you. Someone else may need your story, your faith, your endurance. You may be the answer to someone else's prayer. You may be the reason another finds hope. So the doors you walk through are not just for your benefit. They are for those who will follow. So often we pray for open doors, and we should, but we must also pray for eyes to see and hearts to trust. We must pray for the courage to walk through them and the humility to walk away when the answer is no. We must pray not just for the doors to move, but for our will to be surrendered to the one who moves them. Sometimes the greatest grace is in the doors that never open, because they keep you from settling for less. They preserve you for something greater. They remind you that your story is not over. Every shut door is a boundary of love, not rejection. Every open door is an act of divine orchestration, not coincidence. When doors open, walk boldly. When they shut, bow low. But in all things, remember, you are not abandoned. The silence does not mean absence. The delay does not mean denial. The detour does not mean defeat. The doors of your life are under divine management. You are being led, not left. You are being shaped, not shelved. You are being prepared for something that requires trust deeper than understanding. Do not measure the value of a door by how it feels. Measure it by what it forms in you. If it drives you to prayer, if it teaches you humility, if it exposes your dependence, then it is purposeful. And if it bears fruit in due season, even if that season comes long after the planting, then it was a door worth walking through or waiting beside. Learn to say thank you for the doors that opened. Learn to say thank you for the ones that didn't. Each one is a thread in the tapestry of purpose. You may not see the design now, but one day it will all come together, and you will see that none of it was wasted. Every step, every pause, every opening, every closing, it was all a part of the plan. And in that day you will not regret the doors that closed, because they were not detours. They were the very path that brought you to where you were always meant to be. You have grown up in a world that tells you to take charge, to push, to strive, to break down barriers and refuse to accept no. For an answer, the culture you breathe in teaches you that if something is withheld from you, then you must fight harder for it. It exalts effort, celebrates human will, glorifies the strength of the self-made man or woman. And while there may be value in perseverance, there is a dangerous delusion hidden beneath all of it. The lie that you must force life to give you what you want. But in the kingdom of heaven, it does not work that way. You are not called to force doors open. You are called to trust. Not once in Scripture are we told to bulldoze our way through circumstances, but again and again we are told to wait, to rest, to believe, to walk by faith and not by sight. Your striving is not strength. Your manipulation is not wisdom. Your insistence on forcing outcomes is not faith. It is fear disguised as drive, and it will wear you down, break you, and leave you bitter when life does not yield to your command. But it was never meant to. The world is not under your control. The outcomes you long for are not guaranteed by your ambition. And when you treat life as if it is, you place yourself in the role of God. That is not trust. That is rebellion masked as responsibility. There are seasons where everything in you will want to act, to fix, to take matters into your own hands. You will feel that waiting is weakness and that trusting is passivity. But that is not the truth. It takes more strength to trust than to force. It takes more courage to be still than to run. Anyone can act in panic. Anyone can force something to happen and call it success. But only the one who truly believes in the sovereignty of God can wait in silence, knowing that what is meant to be will not pass them by. Look at Abraham, called out of everything familiar, given a promise with no timeline, no details, no map. And what happened? Time passed, the promise remained unfulfilled, so he took matters into his own hands. He forced a solution. He stepped out of faith and into flesh, and the result, pain, division, consequences that rippled for generations. Because forced outcomes do not carry the blessing of God. They carry the weight of your own wisdom, and your wisdom, no matter how refined, is not enough. Trust is not passive. It is not lazy. It is not a spiritual excuse for inaction. Trust is the most active thing your soul will ever do. It requires you to war against every instinct in your flesh that says, "Fix it now." Trust requires you to crucify your need for control, to lay down your pride, to confess that you do not know best. And in a world that worships self-reliance, that kind of trust looks like foolishness, but it is the wisdom of heaven. Think about Jesus, the Son of God, who had all power, all authority, and yet he trusted. He did not force his way. He did not use his strength to escape suffering or to manipulate circumstances. In the wilderness, he did not turn stones into bread, though he could have. He trusted the timing and provision of the Father. In the garden, he wept and pleaded, but ended his prayer with, "Not my will, but yours be done." That is trust. That is surrender. That is power under submission. And that is the model you are called to follow. You may say, "But what if I miss my moment? What if I don't act and someone else takes what was meant for me?" That fear is rooted in scarcity, not in faith. You cannot miss what was ordained for you. What is truly yours will not be given to another. God is not scrambling to keep up with the decisions of men. His plan does not hinge on your perfect execution. He is not looking for you to force the outcome. He is calling you to faithfulness. You say, "But nothing is happening." That does not mean God is not working. The soil is not dead just because the seed is hidden. The silence is not absence. It is preparation. Do not confuse slowness with stillness. The deepest work often happens in the quiet, and if you cannot trust God in the waiting, how will you trust Him in the walking? If you cannot trust Him when the door is shut, how will you trust Him when it swings wide? Forcing your way will get you results, but they will not be eternal ones. You may achieve the position, but not the peace. You may gain the relationship, but not the blessing. You may grab hold of what you wanted, but find it empty when you have it. Because without trust, without divine timing, even the right thing becomes the wrong thing. Trust does not just wait for the door, it waits for the hand that opens it. And you must ask yourself, do I want what I can get for myself, or what God wants to give me? There is a difference. One is secured by effort, the other by grace. One is maintained by fear, the other by faith. One depends on your strength, the other on His sovereignty. Choose wisely, because if you live by forcing, you will die by exhaustion. But if you live by trust, you will walk in peace. There will be people around you who seem to move faster, rise higher, go further, and you will be tempted to compare, to rush, to mimic. But your calling is not theirs. Your door is not theirs. Your journey is not theirs. And when you trust, you stop striving to match the pace of others. You begin to walk in the rhythm of heaven, the cadence of grace. Trust is not just about where you end up. It's about how you get there, and there is no joy in reaching your goal if you abandon your soul in the process. So many fall into the trap of spiritual performance. You think that if you do enough, say enough, serve enough, give enough, then God will bless you with what you desire. But He is not a vending machine. He is not manipulated by your religious activity. Trust is not about earning a reward. It's about aligning your heart. It's about being willing to say, even if the door never opens, I will still believe you are good. That is trust. That is what He desires. Look at David, anointed as king while still a boy, given a promise but not a throne, and then years of fleeing, hiding, enduring. He could have killed Saul and taken the crown by force. But he didn't. He waited. He trusted. He said, I will not raise my hand against the Lord's anointed. That is a heart that trusts timing. That is a heart that refuses to force. And when the crown did come, it came with peace, with honor, with favor. Because it came by trust, not by theft. Sometimes the greatest act of trust is to stand still while everything in you wants to move. Sometimes it's to close your mouth when you want to speak. Sometimes it's to let go when you want to hold on. Trust is not glamorous. It does not always make sense. It often looks like weakness to the world. But in the kingdom, it is strength. It is obedience. It is power under submission. Do not let your impatience destroy what God is building. Do not let your need for control sabotage your own destiny. The things that are truly worth having, peace, purpose, presence, are not things you can force. They are gifts received through trust. And the more you surrender, the more you see that His way is better. If you are in a season of waiting, don't waste it by complaining. Use it to grow. Use it to listen. Use it to draw near. Trust is not just about the door opening. It's about who you become while you wait. Are you becoming more like the one you follow? Are you learning to rest in His goodness even when the path is unclear? Because the door is not the reward. He is. You were never meant to force your life into shape. You were meant to place your life into His hands. And when you do, when you finally stop striving and start trusting, you find that the door you thought you had to break down opens quietly before you. And not because you pushed, but because He led. Not because you earned it, but because He is faithful. So you trust. When it hurts, you trust. When it's silent, you trust. When the timeline is shattered, when the dream seems lost, when the answers don't come, you trust. Because He is worthy, because He is good, because He knows what you do not, and because trust is not weakness, it is worship, and worship is what you were made for. You've stood before doors that would not open. You've cried, fasted, prayed, and knocked until your knuckles bled, and still they did not move. You've wondered what went wrong, searched your heart for hidden sin, tried to decipher some lesson in the silence, as if your pain were proof of abandonment. But I need you to hear something that may not sit easily with your flesh, but will minister deeply to your soul. Closed doors are often not judgment, but mercy, not the hand of wrath, but the hand of grace. You just didn't recognize it. We imagine grace as always saying yes, as always flowing freely, as always opening every gate and answering every prayer with speed and abundance. But that is not how grace works. Grace is not always a wide, open field. Sometimes it's a wall. Sometimes it's a no that saves you from destruction. Sometimes it's silence that spares you from ruin. The grace of God does not always feel like favor, but it is always good. If God gave you everything you asked for, when you asked for it, how you asked for it, would that make Him good? Or would it make Him unwise? Would it make Him loving? Or would it make Him a servant to your short-sighted desires? You see only today. He sees eternity. You see the surface. He sees the soul. You see an open door and call it destiny, but He sees what's behind it. And sometimes He shuts it because what's waiting there would crush you. You think the relationship ending was rejection, but it was protection. You think the job opportunity disappearing was a step backward, but it was a mercy you'll only understand with time. You think the unanswered prayer is a wound, but it is healing you from an unseen disease. You think God was cruel to close the door, but what if His kindness would not let you go where your heart demanded? We so often forget that grace is not just what we receive, it's what we are spared from. There are doors you begged to open that would have led to compromise, doors that would have put you in positions your character wasn't ready to carry, doors that would have fed your pride, hardened your heart, inflated your ego, and distanced you from the cross. And because He loves you, He shut them. Not because He delights in your pain, but because He delights in your soul. He wants you whole, not just successful, holy, not just comfortable. Sometimes the greatest grace is unanswered prayer, and not unanswered because He did not hear, but because He heard more than your words. He heard your heart. He heard the pain behind the plea. He heard the confusion behind the clarity you claimed to have. And He said, no, not because I don't love you, because I do. That's grace, grace that doesn't always look like a gift, but is. Grace that wounds to heal, grace that withholds to protect, grace that frustrates the flesh but saves the soul. Think of Paul, a man who saw visions of heaven, a man who planted churches, preached boldly, endured faithfully, and yet he writes of a thorn in his flesh, a burden, a limitation. He pleaded 3 times for it to be removed. And God said no. Why? So that Paul would not exalt himself, so that power would be made perfect in weakness. That was grace, painful grace, but grace nonetheless. Think of the Israelites at the edge of the promised land. A door of blessing stood before them. But when they disobeyed and demanded to go in on their terms, God shut it. He sent them back into the wilderness, and though it seemed like punishment, it was grace. Because to enter without trust would have brought disaster, to enter without obedience would have led to ruin, the wilderness became a place of mercy, a time of shaping, and when the door opened again, it opened to a generation who had learned to follow, not fight. You and I, our hearts are so easily deceived. We are so quick to chase what sparkles and so slow to discern what sanctifies. We want the fast track, the shortcut, the open path. But God is not interested in what flatters your ambition. He is forming you for eternity, and so He closes doors. He frustrates your plans. He reroutes your steps, and it feels like loss, but it is gain, eternal gain. You just don't see it yet. If you've ever had a door close and then looked back months or years later and thought, "Thank God it didn't work out," then you've tasted the kind of grace I'm talking about, the grace that didn't answer your prayer with a yes, but answered it with something better, a no that saved you, a silence that shielded you, a detour that led you straight into the arms of the shepherd. We want the open door, but He wants our heart. We want success, but He wants surrender. And so He closes what we thought was the only way. Do not mistake His silence for absence, and do not mistake the shut door as a sign of rejection. Sometimes the door closes because He wants to meet you in the hallway. In the waiting, in the uncertainty, sometimes the hallway becomes the holiest ground, because there when you have nothing to hold onto but Him, you discover what faith really means. That's grace. Grace that peels away every idol. Grace that pulls you into dependence. Grace that teaches you to stop demanding and start trusting. Look at Jesus in the garden. He prayed, "Let this cup pass from me." And the door did not open. The Father did not provide a way around the cross. And yet, through that closed door, salvation came. Through that no, a redemption was born. Was it cruel? No, it was love, the deepest kind of love. And if the Son Himself experienced a closed door as part of a greater purpose, who are you to demand every door swing open for you? There is something profound that happens when you learn to thank God for the closed doors, when you stop seeing them as roadblocks and start seeing them as redirection, when you stop accusing God of cruelty and start confessing His wisdom. That is when your faith matures. That is when your heart shifts from striving to resting. That is when you stop trying to control outcomes and start yielding to the one who controls everything. Sometimes a closed door is an invitation to go deeper, to pray harder, to listen longer, to trust more fully. It is not the end. It is a beginning, the beginning of a journey you never would have chosen, but will one day be thankful for. The beginning of a story that will shape you in ways comfort never could. The beginning of a chapter where God becomes not just the one who gives you good things, but the one who is good even when He gives you nothing. You may not understand the closed door today. It may hurt. It may confuse. It may grieve. But if you belong to Him, if you have truly surrendered your life, then you can trust that no door is closed without reason. No denial is without purpose. No silence is without presence. He is not playing games with your life. He is guarding it. and He is doing it with more wisdom and love than you could ever comprehend. So rest. Let go of what didn't happen. Release what you thought should have been. Surrender the blueprint you were so sure of, and trust that the one who closed the door did so because something greater is being written. Something higher than your plans, something deeper than your dreams, something that will, in time, make you say with tears in your eyes and peace in your heart, that door didn't open, and thank God it didn't. Closed doors are not the absence of God's goodness. They are the evidence of it. They prove that He is near, that He is involved, that He is not willing to let you settle for anything less than His best. And while His best often looks different from what you imagined, it always leads to life. Abundant life, eternal life, holy life, and in that kind of life, every closed door becomes a monument of grace. Reminder that you are loved far more than you understand.